Thanks for tuning in to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch.
And I'm Pops.
And welcome to our next episode of College Football Playoff Breakdown for the National Championship game that happened last night between Michigan and Washington. We'll go through really what happened in the game. I know I'm going to have to sit back and eat my words. I had picked Washington, and that could not have been farther from the truth that game last night. But before we get into anything, Pops is going to break us down with the past and present. Him giving it for the first time. He did well. He was 2 for 2 on the last episode of guessing his players. So now he'll get to test me. We'll see how I do.
Yeah, man. And honestly, you guys should have stuck. You should have stuck with your guns. You guys picked Michigan right out the gates early in the season, and they pulled through, man. But let's get to it. I'm gonna keep it just so you can cage your mind a little bit. One of these guys played for Michigan. The other guy played for Washington. Just to try to some big clues there. So which one do you want first, past or present?
Let's go present.
All right, present. 2018 draft class by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pick number 12.
Pick number 12, Tampa Bay. Where did he go to school?
He went to Washington.
Went to Washington. Is this Vita Vea?
Vita Vea, man. Yeah, right out the gates. Vita Vea. I was looking it up. I was trying to see somebody who played for that had a little bit of significance so far in their career. He's got a Pro Bowl under his belt, won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. And yeah, man, Vita Vea was the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year in 2017, right before he got drafted. So I felt like he was a good player. Jake Browning was high on that list because of the way that he started to play with the Bengals with Burrow being out. But Vita Vea is who I went with. All right, so you ready for the pass?
Let's go pass. I know it's Michigan, so.
Yeah, man. Already starting out, we got the pass here. The teams that this guy played for: Chicago Bears, Indianapolis Colts, Baltimore Ravens, and the Chargers.
So Bears,
Colts, Ravens,
Chargers. Out of Michigan. I'm trying to. What was the draft year?
I think this is going to be the one that gives it away. Drafted in 87.
87. Before Greasy. 87 out of Michigan. I'm not going to lie. I am sitting back trying to think about who in the early 90s was playing for the Bears. And then went through Colts, Ravens, Chargers. Offense or defense?
Offense. Do you want the position?
Offense. Is this Mike Hart? No, that's too. Mike Hart was later. Offense. Went to the Bears. I'm honestly, I don't know this one. I'm sitting back trying to think of a wide receiver from that time that's a little early. Because the only two guys from early, you got Woodson and you got the guy Desmond Howard, but both of those guys were 90 guys. I'm sitting back trying to think 87. You got me on this one. I'm not sure who this is.
All right. If you're throwing in the towel, the answer is the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, Jim Harbaugh.
Man, dude, that's a good one. That is a good one.
I think I was able to stump
you got me on that one.
Yeah. The way that I saw it,
I just see him as a Colt.
Yeah, the way that you brought him up in discussion before, you always mentioned the Colts, but he was actually drafted by the Bears, got to play for Ditka before Ditka got fired. And then in the 94 season, he went over to the Colts and had some success there. It's kind of funny. We've talked about the woes of the quarterbacks for the Bears, and Harbaugh actually had the highest completion percentage on the Bears at 62% in the 90s. That was the franchise record of 62%. Pass completion percentage. And then he goes and have some success with the Colts and then kind of tampered down, getting ready to start his coaching career as he progressed into the 2000s there.
Yeah, I mean, as a player, it's not that he did bad. I don't think he never rose to that level of this is going to be the franchise guy. He found some success with Indianapolis, not Ditka. When you really think about the Ditka era with the 85 Bears, his inability to get along with Buddy Ryan doomed them from having future success. And I know that
100%.
goes both ways with Buddy Ryan and Ditka. But if both of those guys, there's a really good 30 for 30 doc that some of the Bears guys did on that 85 defense. And they even mention it. Like, they knew what they were capable of if they had been able to stay together, and they just could not get on the same page in terms of a coaching staff to set aside differences to continue to win there. So that's a great pull. My mind was not going Jim Harbaugh. It's foul on me. There's your Pop's got to win first try. So now Pops is going to catch some heat next time, but that's a good one. It's a great pull by you with Jim Harbaugh. I was not expecting that, but it's sort of perfectly transitioned. You pulled the perfect pass player to go right into this game. I got to give credit to Harbaugh. I mean, he assembled, in my opinion, the best offensive and defensive line in college football this year, and that's why they won. I did not see Michigan, and it's crazy because I just give them props of assembling the best offensive and defensive line, and I didn't see them running the football as well as they did against Washington, and maybe that was because they didn't run it. They ran it well against Bama there at the end, but they really came out throwing more against Bama. I know this may be the Bama guy in me talking. I sat back last night and I was like, oh, Bama was better than I expected them to be. To play Michigan as tough as they did, I thought spoke highly of Bama. But, looking at Washington going up 2 scores quick was huge. I thought they were going to put the game away there in the first half. They did. It was over before people really knew it was. But when they had a chance to go up 21-3, I was sitting there. I was like, dude, this is about to be a death knell here in this game, especially if they run in. They'd have settled for a field goal, but they played a tremendous ball game and really dominated Washington from the first to the end of the game. There wasn't a part there that you set back and were like, man, maybe they have a chance. The closest that they got is when Washington threw that bomb and you thought they were going to go down and make it a 7-point game, and they got called back for holding, and then from that point it was done. I mean, what was your sort of initial outlook into the game before we really get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I texted you when Harbaugh was sitting out. I can't remember if it was after the Penn State game or if it was after the Ohio State game. And I said, hey, man, do you see anybody beating Michigan if McCarthy is on his game? And, you replied back, Bama or Georgia. Those were your only two responses that you had. And, Bama put up a great fight, and, the plays just hit for Michigan late in that game. Corum was able to do his thing to tie up or to go on and win the game against Bama. And so I had watching what they did last year and losing a heartbreaker to TCU before TCU got stomped out by Georgia. You just kind of thought, okay, this team's going to be back. These guys are coming back. As soon as Corum said, hey, I'm coming back for the next season, you just felt like they were going to be the team to beat. And even through all the adversity of Harbaugh sitting out for six games this past season, they answered the call. And I think he said it best. He's like, the reason why we persevered is because we were innocent. Now, whether or not the NCAA finds that to be true, we'll find out. But I was on the side with Michigan that it was kind of their year to lose in a sense, just because they had the experience on their side after what happened last year.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll address this real quick just because this is my take. I'll let you give your take on it. This is the sign stealing to me. I think it's getting overblown just because every team does it. And to me, it's part of the game. Like, I know people are not going to like me saying that, especially for people who are anti-Michigan. But there's a reason that on the opposing sideline, there's like 3 different guys giving signals, in that they're holding up these boards and doing everything they can. Like, they're not doing that for the fans. They're doing that to try to conceal what their call is. I like what Saban's, his whole solution to this thing is to be the NFL. That the second you go inside the headset, that's the way that we're going to go.
Yep.
The NCAA, by choosing to not, put it in the headset, is a foul on the NCAA. And, they're going to sit back and be like, well, some teams can't afford it. If you can't afford to have a headset and, inside your helmet, don't have a football team. Plain and simple. Like, that's frustrating to me that is the argument that gets brought up. The sad part about it is I can absolutely 100% see the NCAA here in a few years, that if they come out and go, yep, there was cheating, it's beyond the standard that we hold, that they'll vacate the title, which is the dumbest thing on the history of the planet. Because at the end of the day, Michigan won the games. Like, plain and simple. I don't know how you can. It's just like the Reggie Bush in 2005.
Yep.
You just sit back and you go, Reggie won the Heisman. He was the best player on the field. The idea that you take away championships from teams, like the NFL didn't do that with Deflategate.
Yep.
Why are we sitting here doing it in college? It's the dumbest thing in the world. But I'll let you give your take on the whole Spygate or whatever people want to call it.
No, man. I mean, it's spot on. Exactly what you said. I think they got to move to that technology of putting the headset inside the helmets and just move on with it. There's no reason why we should even be talking about it, because let's be honest, everybody goes through their scouting report. We always try to find out who's going to do what's their strengths, what's their weaknesses, tendencies, things of that nature. And meanwhile, I've got the tape and I'm seeing you guys throw these signals. So like, if you're not changing them every week, which a lot of teams probably don't, that's kind of a foul on you for just leaving yourself vulnerable from that aspect. If I'm able to pick it up on tape, there shouldn't be any pushback about that. Now, should we be sending Connor Stallions to sit on the Central Michigan's sideline? I don't know. I'm curious to see how he, how that all plays out. If he was just a rogue actor, or if there was the NCAA finds some, unlawful or questionable conduct on behalf of the Michigan program. But like you said, man, it's there. You throw the signs, we're able to take them. It's all part of the game today. You want to change it, put the headset in the helmet completely. And I won't say anything on the 2005 Heisman, but should have gone to Vince Young.
Yeah, I mean, you and Maul can fight over that. I'm on the. I get that Vince won the championship, but there was no. I didn't turn the TV on to watch Vince Young that year. I turned the TV on to watch Reggie Bush, and I wasn't
Fair.
a USC fan. He was
Valid.
He was spectacular. I've watched that highlight of him in college, 2,000 times. I don't think I've ever pulled up a Vince Young tape of him in Texas. And, the national championship is a great one, but throughout the season, Reggie, he was just different. He was different that whole year. And I mean, going back to the sign stealing thing, the thing that it didn't stop is it didn't stop Penix from missing guys. That was the biggest difference for me for Washington between the Texas game and, the Michigan game for Washington, is Penix was hitting guys in stride, over the shoulder, not missing guys, hitting them in stride. You could not have asked for a better game from Penix last game against Texas. This game, I mean, they're down early, go for it on fourth down, and misses a wide open guy for possibly a touchdown, but for sure they pick up the first down. And he missed a few guys throughout the game. And especially the deep balls down the sideline, I don't think he had one that, even if the guy was there, most of them, they were trying to reach out one hand, it was taking them out of bounds. Like, it wasn't something that gave the receiver a really good chance to get the ball. Penix just wasn't on last night, and that was a huge part of the game. It didn't. I mean, he got beat up by that Michigan defensive line, but Penix was missing guys.
Yeah,
Plain and simple last night.
No, I agree with that. we saw it was honestly quite a you could give a little bit of credit to the Washington defense, for being able to hold Michigan from putting up another score on them going into the half, because they were able to eventually punch it in, and we go in. And it's only a one possession game at halftime, but yes, Penix was missing guys. I know they threw out a couple. The one that I can think of, it ended up being called a PI against Michigan. They were going. Penix was throwing to McMillan, but he had a Dunes underneath. It would have been a touchdown. He had a crossing. All three guys go cross field. A Dunes comes from the backside, and it would have been a touchdown had Penix been able to see it. And that's the play that Penix makes all year. And for whatever reason, he was just missing it last night. One of the statistics, they had one play over 20 yards, and you give props to Michigan for keeping them in front of them. But also at the same time, I think there was a lot of issues with Penix, and we can kind of go into it. But me personally, my opinion was that when his ankle got rolled, pretty much that first series after halftime, I think it was just downhill from there. Like, it was hurting him to get on that plant foot to throw the ball.
Oh, I mean, he was. I've had my rib cartilage knocked loose once, and he was grabbing the ribs. And once that gets to hurting, it really showed to me. I'm not. I think it was because I've played quarterback that I sit back and it's like, man, I remember that. Is he would throw and he was doing everything in his power to not get hit.
Yeah, just that pain. Yeah.
Follow it. They talked about a lot in the fourth. Is he would throw and he was falling backwards, even though the guy wasn't right there. He could have stepped into it, but he was just like, when your ribs are hurting that bad, your body sort of goes into like, let's not do this again mode. And he definitely went into that. I mean, on the other side, I'm like on this, like, the only reason I bring this up is because Harbaugh, and I get it, you're a head coach, you rep your guy. JJ McCarthy is not an NFL quarterback. He made some good throws. He made some plays, but he wasn't. This is not the guy that it's like, hey, this is the guy that's taken over for everything. It's almost like Stetson Bennett, honestly. Like, it's a guy that gets the job done, but at no point are you sitting back being like, dude, that's the next quarterback of the future. It's not me trying to take a shot at him. I know it's definitely coming off as a shot. It's more the talent around him really helped him succeed with that offensive line, and it helped that you had the number one defense all year. It was just one that running game, Corum, having that two-headed monster that really showed up, in the playoffs, and really from that Ohio State game on, the running game and the offensive line really imposed its will upon each and every team. I just sit back with JJ McCarthy, and I know we're going to do a segment later, and I think that this is how I would sum it up for Michigan fans. If you had to pick, a goat mountain of Michigan, and you had to put 4 players or coaches on it, the greatest of all time, McCarthy's not up there.
No.
Like, I think that if you're going to put a quarterback from Michigan, and I get he doesn't have a national championship, it's the pros that make him who he is. It's Brady.
Yeah.
And even another quarterback that I think played better in the pros than JJ will was Greasy. Like, Greasy didn't have a terrible pro career. He won the 97 championship for Michigan. I sit back with Michigan. I think that Harbaugh probably puts himself on the mountain. You sit back and you think about the results he had as a player, time in the NFL, and especially now, 3 straight victories against Ohio State, a national championship, undefeated season, 15-0. I sit back, I look at like a Harbaugh, Charles Woodson, Desmond Howard, both of their Heisman winners, and Tom Brady being up on the mountain. That's sort of where I see it. And I only say that to say it's not. He's not the guy that I think Michigan. If you gave Michigan the chance to go, hey, you could go have anyone in the country. They're not picking JJ to be the quarterback, But
Yeah.
he did
Yeah,
what he
no.
needed to do to win the game.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that they weren't relying on him, to throw the ball last night. And he really didn't look like he was on. He was missing guys. Almost not to the extent of Penix, but he looked out of rhythm as well. Whether it's the nerves or what have you. Uh, you know, McCarthy was not able to produce the same results that we saw kind of last week against Alabama. Now they won, but that was purely on the backs of Corum and Edwards out of the backfield. I mean, those guys just tore up Washington left and right. I mean, both guys going for 100. Just absolutely insane. I mean, Edwards right out the gates had 3 rushes over 100 yards and 2 tutties. I mean, if you would have looked at just that stat, you would have thought that game was lost from the first quarter, essentially. But Washington was able to fight back some. Your piece on McCarthy, I agree. I think I would have to go back and watch, but the way that I interpreted Harbaugh saying McCarthy was the greatest Michigan QB, I kind of felt like it was maybe for that moment and not overlooking what Brady's done. But I agree. I can see where a lot of people are saying that McCarthy's greater than Brady, and that's just absolutely not true. And all you got to do is watch one Michigan game to realize McCarthy will not make it very far in the NFL. I think he's in a backup role for sure, like, again, a Jake Browning or Stetson Bennett, kind of like you've already alluded to, but I do not see this guy making it further than that. I mean, we kind of talked about it too, just where
it's tough.
Where his draft stock is. I mean, we're looking realistically at best maybe a 5th rounder.
Well, I mean, what's nuts is I know Kuiper has him 5th overall, and I can't say this enough. I always have so much disdain for anything Mel Kiper has to throw out on the draft board.
Just not
I
even
sit
close.
back and I look at Penix, and I'm sort of in the same boat. Penix has. It's funny. If you go back to the preview for the playoff game, I sort of brought this up that Penix has this ability to just miss some guys. There's certain times in the game that you would expect, and I'm not sure if it was you or if it was Maul that said it in our text thread, but I thought that was probably the most, well put text about Penix that I've read, which is for a 6th-year quarterback in college, he should have not been missing those throws. Like, it doesn't get easier once you go to the NFL. It gets significantly harder to then throw the football. I mean, you look at Tua, you look at some of the guys that are projected to sort of be that guy, and even they have their struggle. I look at Penix, who's rated higher than JJ, and I'd have serious problems putting them into a system where you can't just throw some dimes. It's just more about that. Now, for Penix and Washington, the other thing that didn't help them, and I know Maul or you brought it up last night in the text, was there no one else than 7 to run the football? Like, my man was playing on like half a leg, and we knew that coming out of the Texas game, and he got hurt the first series, and it was just they lacked explosiveness in the running game, which was Michigan's strength. So if you're going to play against literally what this team does best in stopping the run, you better have someone that's at full health. And that was very surprising to me to just see them consistently go back to him, even though, hey, this may not be what's best for the team. I get he got them there, but when you're trying to win a game, it's not about, making everyone happy. It's about doing what's best for getting results on the field. That was very surprising to me, seeing him out there.
But the one thing that I will caveat that with, after watching Will Mixon miss hearing footsteps and drop the wide open 4th down conversion to get that first down, I could see why they left Dylan Johnson in the game. I mean, he was their only option, as it seems like. We didn't see much of Mixon, but the one chance that the guy did have to get an easy first down, he heard them footsteps coming and dropped an easy pass because he saw the defender before he caught the ball. Which could be a big question.
Yeah. I mean, I sit back and I think about Washington's wide receivers. Another huge props to Michigan. And I think this is we talk about it when it's bad, and we rarely talk about it when it's really good. Michigan made one-on-one tackles.
Yeah.
Like it, and really just in the moment, like amazing tackles to keep guys from getting first downs, keep them from really banking it like fourth and less than a yard. You know, those are it's impressive, and it shouldn't be like something that we talk about. It should just be that you should only talk about the times where teams tackle bad, but I find that more times than not, you don't really find a lot of teams that tackle very, very well one on one. And Michigan nailed that on the head last night. There was a few plays in the first half that they were sort of letting guys get on the outside, but second half, dude, they locked them down. No one was getting away from them.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I think it might have been early game nerves because we saw a little bit. Um, there were a couple of missed assignments that Michigan had where they were able to get some receivers behind them, but immediately made the tackle. And yeah, it goes to a testament. Those guys, as soon as they caught the ball, it was one on one to get the first down, and they just were not making it. Yeah, hats off to those guys completely.
And I will say, I think it was going into the fourth quarter. It was 20-13. It was a one possession game, and this is where I had made mention of it, and it worked out that it was the opposite of what I said in terms of Washington winning. But Michigan late in games found ways to win, and Washington found ways to try to give it up. And last night proved it without a shadow of a doubt that Michigan knew how to close out that game. They, you know, Washington punted, Michigan drove it right down the field and
Yep.
ran it in, and then got a pick and ran it all the way down, and then just iced it from that point. It was over. Once it was really over when they got up by 2 scores, just based upon how that game went. But from that standpoint, yet again, props off to Michigan. 15-0, beat Ohio State, beat Bama, got to the Natty, and then really put on a show in terms of both sides of the football of how to play. There was a few times that Michigan maybe dropped a few passes on offense, but outside of that, they played a really, really good football game throughout that whole game. They were in control the whole time.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think the biggest question that's going to remain. I heard something that McCarthy's coming back. It'll be interesting to see. We've already kind of discussed it. What his ceiling is as a quarterback for Michigan and even into his future. The question remains, man, is Harbaugh sticking around? I mean, that seems like that's going to be what's next for them. They said it last night. Harbaugh's like, I just want to focus on right now, which is a very ominous thing to say, especially for everybody who's convinced that he's returning back to the NFL.
We've had, and I guess I'll open it up to where people can sort of see inside of our text messages, because we had this debate before the Natty ever happened. And my prediction is that they won, that Harbaugh was gone. And my logic with that is he's proven everything he needed to prove at Michigan. He's won 3 straight against Ohio State, 3 straight CFP berths. This one culminated in winning the Natty, undefeated season. At the end of the day, this is as high as you're going to get. He has yet to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. And I think that there are more than enough teams in the pros that will give him full control, especially after winning. I get that Michigan may, give him a big contract or something, but it's difficult in college because let me tell you, he's only 3 straight years from losing to Ohio State from being on the hot seat. Like,
Yeah.
that's college football. Not saying the NFL isn't the same. I think NFL definitely gives guys a little bit more grace depending on the franchise that you go to have some struggles, more consistently rather than college. But I mean, he's an NFL guy. That's how he coaches, and he made an NFL, a Super Bowl capable team with the 49ers. He's done it before in the NFL. I think that if someone like the Chargers gives him full control. I know that's the team that he's been linked to the most. I would sit back and say he leaves. That's just my gut. What are you thinking in terms of where you see Harbaugh, what his mindset is, and what do you see him doing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that makes it real simple is what is the NCAA going to do with this investigation? I mean, if they come down this summer or even this spring, that's still enough time for him to jump ship and be like, all right, I'm out. You know, he may not get the desirable job. I think if he wants the Chargers, yeah, he's going to have to make that decision before the NCAA comes to terms with what happened at Michigan. And I surely hope the team doesn't have to pay for it because he jumped ship and they take it out on the team like they did USC. I personally, I would love to see him stay. That was my piece. Maul and I both agreed. I think it does come down to what the NCAA hands down to him. If he's going to be, suspended for a year, I would just say a year plus, or anything close to half the season like he was this year, he's gone. You don't want to deal with that red tape every single year just because you have transformed your program. I'm not going to spout conspiracy theories, but there was talk about where these investigations came from. If you got to worry about that kind of backstabbing in college football, just go to the pros, and I don't have to worry about this stuff anymore. I get guys recruited because I'm the one who chose them to come here by throwing them a contract with some money. And he's going to get more money as a head coach in the NFL. It does come with some more responsibilities, but I think overall he's going to make more in the pros. So I say he stays if the NCAA doesn't come down on Michigan. Just try to build that legacy a little bit more, maybe win 1 or 2 more natties before trying to go back. But if he gets handed the keys to the Chargers, I think he would take that in a heartbeat.
And this is not me trying to say that I think that Harbaugh doesn't want a challenge. It's not that at all. It's understanding the system is that the Big Ten changes next year. Bringing in USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, it changes things. Like, it makes it difficult to recruit. It adds a layer of complexity to the league that he didn't have to deal with before. And that's not saying that he's not capable of doing it. I think Harbaugh's fully capable of adjusting to that change, much like Saban's going to have to do with Texas and Oklahoma coming in. It's more about in the NFL, and I know we've alluded to this a lot. You just sort of did with, let's just get the elephant out of the room. It was Ohio State that the rumor is that, was hired a private investigator to follow, Michigan around and investigate this, and that makes sense. Does the NFL have stuff, scandals happen all the time? Yeah. But there is so much, I want to say, regularity to the NFL that you don't have in college, where it is more predictable. I think it comes down way more to you have in the NFL the ability to sign a guy to a contract, and with the NIL, guys opting out, transfer portal, it just changes a ton of college sports are going under a huge transformation, and we'll see where that ends up for everyone. That's why I think he gets out, just because the NFL, I do think, is more stable in how they approach things, and if a team's willing to give him total control. I mean, I just sit back. Vrabel got fired this morning. You sit back and you look at the top of the draft. I know the Panthers don't hold the pick, but the Panthers, they need a new head coach. Washington Commanders, they need a new head coach. We don't know about Belichick and the Patriots, but that could be a possibility. The Chargers need a new head coach. Who knows about the Giants? The Titans need a new head coach. The Falcons need a new head coach. I mean, I sit back and look at the Raiders need a new head coach.
Raiders.
There's a lot of teams on this list that jobs are opening up. Now, I do want to stray away from the Harbaugh. I've been seeing this more and more recently and I want to get your take on it. And it is college football, especially since we're talking about Harbaugh leaving. This would be a huge change in the college football landscape. There is a ton of rumors right now that Kirby Smart goes to Atlanta and becomes the Falcons' next head coach. I think that Kirby's young enough that he could do it. The question, I sit back and I know people are going to argue he's had too much success at Georgia to leave. Saban left post winning with LSU, and there wasn't a threat to Saban at LSU. Like, I know Florida was there, but it was Saban's for the taking to go to Miami. Kirby Smart was on the staff at LSU that left and followed him to Miami. What happens with that? I don't know. It's an interesting proposition because he doesn't have to move his family. He gets to stay in Georgia. He knows Atlanta. It gives him the opportunity because I don't care who you are. Let's just be real. Winning a national championship in college is amazing. It's a step up to win the Super Bowl. Like, it just is. That's the grand prize. It's the Professional Football League. To be able to get the keys to an NFL franchise, I think is super hard to turn down and say no to. That's why what are your thoughts with Kirby? Do you think there's any type of chance that happens?
Yeah. I think we were talking about this when we saw the December transfer portal open up, and we saw guys, Vandegrift leaving Georgia, the future starter of the program. That should be alarming as well. Some of other key defenders on that team. Looking right now at the Falcons, they got the number 8 pick this year's draft. They need a quarterback. They know they need a quarterback. I'm not saying that's the only missing puzzle piece, but having the number 8 draft, Kirby could go in, get his guy. I could see it happening based on all the rumors floating around. Like you said, you've got Nick Saban going to Miami. If he had, who was it? If he had Drew Brees and not, was it Culpepper?
Dante Culpepper.
Yeah, not Culpepper at the end of his career. Who knows if Saban would have stayed in the NFL and never came back to Bama. He's got the taste there being on the staff. I see it happening. And the reason being, just like you said, it's that next step up. We go through life just from a basic standpoint. We all want to make ourselves better, in some sort of way. And in your profession, why not? Like, worst case scenario, you get fired and you go back to college just like Saban did. It was no big deal. He had the keys to LSU, comes back to Bama, and now Bama's been on top, all of 2010s. And even so now, like, I see Bama being a tough team to beat next year yet again. And so, yes, I see Kirby Smart putting his name in the hat. It's just a matter of when they want to leak that out of Athens.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I sit back and I look at the college landscape, a little preview of next year, and I guess we can sort of transition in this after giving Michigan their props. Ryan Day, if I want to go to the Big 12 or the Big 10, that's becoming sort of the Big 24 or however many teams are in there now. They're just growing in size every year. USC's a mess because USC, they lost their number 1 recruit from 2023, the quarterback, which I don't think is a loss. Supposedly he was number 3 behind a preferred walk-on. It sounds like the kid just sucked. He went to Boise State. So I'm just saying he didn't go to a Power 5 school. So that tells me a lot that there was something there. And the fact that Lincoln Riley was going out and shopping for a quarterback told me that he knew he didn't have his guy. I don't know if USC, they're going to have to find a quarterback to be able to play for him. The Lincoln Riley will go find someone. The biggest question in USC is when are they going to find a defense? As of so far, it's not in this turn of the century after Pete Carroll era.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is you look even at his Oklahoma teams, it's like we're just going to blow you out, and who cares about the defense? On my offense, we'll beat yours, and we're just going to stick with that. It's been all the way back, to Baker times, and that's just the way his offense has been.
100%. And you look at Washington. Washington is a team that it will be very interesting to see how they rebuild. I think a lot of people, props to Washington. People may not realize this. Who'd Washington lose to last year? You remember the
Uh,
FCS team, the
yeah,
Montana Grizzly?
yeah,
you know, a huge turnaround from them, but you have a lot of guys that come back. A lot of guys. I mean, they're losing Penix. They're losing their number one, probably number two and number three wide receiver, running back, offensive lineman. It's difficult to recruit out of Washington. He hit right with the transfer of Penix. It's just difficult. And it brings more credit to what Harbaugh's done. It brings more credit to Saban and to Kirby Smart that it's I don't want to say it's tough enough to get a team to a national championship. It's even tougher to keep it going
keep him
year
there.
after year.
Yep.
I mean, look at Clemson. Clemson's a prime example. Who would have thought that Clemson would have not even made the CFP champion or the ACC championship this year? They were looked at yet again as one of these top teams, and it's like they don't have a quarterback. And they're not having the same type of guys, which a huge piece of that is Kirby Smart. Came to Northeast Georgia, which is Clemson's backyard, and started recruiting, and guys that Clemson was able to pull, Georgia was now pulling. When you think about the local kids that grow up, it's a fight. I mean, it's why Alabama's had regression. When Kirby went to Georgia, it took guys. You think about the defensive linemen. That's why I told you guys maybe it was just small. You look at that Bears defense, or excuse me, not the Bears. The close enough. The way they played college football for the two straight natties in Georgia. You look at that Georgia defensive line. Those were the guys that Bama routinely had that were just sitting on the bench for their first 2 years.
Yep.
The transfer portal has really changed things for college teams. And then when you're just not having the depth that, Jalen Carter was your third string guy that was a true freshman, and you just kept rotating him in and he got time to build, it changes things. It makes it more difficult. It helps improve the competition to where you get a little bit more teams in it. But at the same time, it's difficult. It's difficult year in and year out to win. And it's why I sit back and I look at Washington. I go, we'll find out how good they really are with recruiting and coaching next year as they go into the Big Ten. They could easily be a TCU that next year maybe doesn't even get to a bowl game. But what are your thoughts on Washington?
Yeah, I mean it's going to be tough. You've kind of talked about, or it'll be interesting to see who they're able to pull out of the transfer portal as well, on top of the recruiting that they've already been doing. I think this still helps Kalen DeBoer, pad his resume, for going in there and being able to turn around this franchise like that. I mean, the guy's able to win. I mean, we kind of talked about it, just 10 years ago. He was an OC in the FCS, at Southern Illinois, where I went to school. And it just goes to show, the type of coach that he is. We'll see, man. I have a lot of questions still to see what happens. Definitely going into the transfer portal, you kind of started alluding to it with the guys before we're able to sit on the bench and learn. I think a lot now we're getting to see the continued laziness. You probably had teammates like this, like all the talent in the world, but did not want to work. And I feel like the transfer portal to some degree allows for that to happen. You don't want to work hard at Alabama, fine, transfer somewhere else. You'll start, but you're probably going to kill your draft stock because you're not working for anything anymore. And, you're just out there to play with the boys. So it'll be interesting to see. I think.
Here's
Ahead.
my opinion on the transfer portal, and get your take on it. When you're a 5-star recruit and you get recruited by Ohio State, or Michigan or Alabama or Georgia, and then after 2 to 3 years of not playing, you transfer out, there's a high probability it wasn't the school, it was you.
100%.
I don't see a ton of guys that leave those schools and do super well. There are your hits. I sit back and look at Adonis Mitchell that played at Texas this year, came out of Georgia winning 2 straight, still looked every bit as good as he did at Georgia, if not better, and probably improved his stock going to a Texas team that threw the ball a little bit more. Alabama, they've, outside of the last guy that I know of that left that really did super well, was Alvin Kamara.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when he was a true freshman, he had TJ Yeldon, Kenyon Drake, Derrick Henry, and a few other guys all in that running back room.
Good luck.
Oh, yeah. It was one of those ones where it's like, dude, I may not see the field, and I'm still that type of player. It's just tough to get on the field. Those are the type of guys that I sit back. They're onesies and twosies that come out of the big programs, but the vast majority are just not going to make it. However, the opposite end of the transfer portal is true as well. You look at a guy like Penix, who's like, man, I'm the best player on Indiana. And at the end of the day, I can be a Heisman level quarterback, and I'm not going to get any help at Indiana, so I have to go to a big school. That's where I see the transfer portal really being big. I know Maul's talked about it a few times. Kentucky has a defensive tackle that was not highly recruited. Kentucky's made him into this guy that's probably going to go high in the draft. But now Kentucky's having to recruit him all over again, because it's like, dude, I can go to one of these bigger schools, get an NIL paycheck that's going to be pretty good, improve my draft stock even more because I'm going to be surrounded with talent, and maybe win a natty. All those things, I think, for the smaller tiered schools, that's the danger. Is if you have a really good player, the likelihood of you holding on to him for all the time until he gets the draft, slim to none, in my opinion. But what is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with paying these guys is, they have a good breakout year. It's essentially, turning into what it is in the NFL. Think of it like your contract year, of your rookie deal or something like that. You're making chump change, barely being able to pay room and board at some other school, and then all of a sudden, you have a breakout year. You're like, hey, I'm gonna go chase this money. So in that regard, yes, I do think that there's a lot of upside to the transfer portal. Penix, right there being number 2 for the Heisman, case in point. But I do see a lot of negative, as I already alluded to the guys who just, hey, I'm not doing anything here. I'm not putting in the work. I'm gonna go somewhere else. Kind of how you alluded to at the initial start. It's not the program, it's you. And those guys just don't want to work hard, and it just essentially allows them to move on and essentially kind of give up on themselves a little bit by not putting in their own effort at the program that they were drafted, that they were recruited to right out of high school. That's kind of my take. It's good for the guys who, like you mentioned, the guy out of Kentucky. It's good for those guys, but I think also for every one of those guys, there's probably going to be 5, lazy bums who are going to cast out to the pasture and, lose the opportunity to potentially go pro just because they don't want to work for it.
It's that, and I think it's also a misunderstanding of where you fall in the totem pole. And I say that in this reference that when you are a good player coming out of high school and you're getting recruited and you're the best guy on the field, it is a humbling experience. I still remember leaving high school, going to college, and I always remember, I would take off running in games in high school, and for most of the time, you're running over guys, and I think that once a year you would get hit by somebody that you were like, that dude can hit. Like, and then I remember when you got to college, everybody hit like that. And then there was a few guys that you were like, dude, I ain't going over there again. That was, I'm in danger sitting there running to that side of the field. And the level of competition between high school and college it's immense. Like it speaks so highly when I see a true freshman go in and play extremely well. Like I can't emphasize how rare that is. That takes a lot. That is incredible to be able to make that jump. And then, I think Gut was over the house the other day and I was talking to him. You have Lamar Jackson that goes into the NFL at 21 years old.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's won NFL MVP. You just sort of sit back and there are guys that when they leave college then go pro, they bring it up a level. And you think about how many guys, that's the thing that I sit back, I look at Florida State, we can, I guess, address that massacre that happened. Um, all these guys decide to go pro. And at the end of the day, when you look at Florida State's roster, maybe 3 to 4 of the 20 guys that set out for the draft are going to go in the first round. You may have guys out of that 20 that don't even get drafted. I know Bama guys every single year. Bama will have guys go to the combine, don't get drafted.
Yep.
It's so difficult when you make that next jump. And I think guys have too many people talking in their ears that they just sort of sit back and they let people tell them how great they are. And the problem is they're not listening to their coaches. Like I know Saban at the end of the day sits down with guys and goes, I have ex-GM managers, I have people who their job here at Alabama is to tell you where you should grade out for the draft. And guys don't listen. I remember he told a safety, he never mentioned his name, but he told him, hey, you had a good year. Teams don't see you higher than a third or fourth round pick. But he had people especially here on the old phone, on Twitter and everything else, that was like, this guy's going to be a first round draft pick. And what happened? He fell to the fourth round. He's not in the league anymore. And you sit back and you go, you don't know how long you're going to make it. If you have the ability to get up to the first round and make an extra, $20 to $30 million difference between being a first and a third round draft pick, I'd probably take that, those odds.
Completely.
It's difficult. It's super difficult, and guys don't understand that coming out, which you have to give them sort of grace. At 17 years old, for me, I was an idiot. It's easy to say now, but I wasn't the smart, I didn't make great decisions as a 17-year-old. And I can't sit back and help to think, Arch Manning, and hats off to him with NIL. It's an amazing stat, but at the same time, it's an incredibly sad stat to me. Arch Manning didn't play this year in terms of a starter. He made $3.1 million on NIL.
Yep.
The starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, Purdy, made
870.
$870.
Yeah.
Dude, what a time to be a college athlete that you're getting paid more in a backup role of a college team than to be a professional quarterback in the NFL.
Purely because
and
of
at
your
the
last
same
name.
time, oh yeah. I mean, do I think he has talent? 100%.
Yes.
How
Yes.
does that talent play out? We'll find out. It's just difficult. He is going to always have to play against the pressure.
Absolutely.
Like at the end of the day, when Peyton had pressure because he was the number one pick, but this kid is going to have pressure because of that name that he's getting paid for, being a Manning kid. I feel bad for him in that sense because every time he has a bad game, people are going to look and want to throw him underneath the bus and just say, he's not good. He's never going to be Peyton. He's never going to be Eli. They'll trash him. For as much as they will exalt him when he has good games, when he has bad games, it will be a terrible place to be. I hope he has a good support staff around him.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Looking at, Arch Manning, he didn't even really have, what I think he only won one state championship the whole time he was in high school. He had a great numbers, but as far as actually winning the championships, I think he only was able to get one. However, you bring up these names of guys that just aren't able to make that jump, and I think the one that sticks out the most to me, man, is he was on QB1 on Netflix. If you know where I'm going with this,
Spencer Rattler.
yeah, dude. When he was 14 years old, this kid already knew he was going to Oklahoma. He didn't have to work at all in high school, and then look what this guy's produced, in college, and gets kicked out of Oklahoma for Caleb Williams, and then all of a sudden ends up at South Carolina, and he's just not who Lincoln Riley thought he was when he brought him into college, and you're going to have examples of that, uh, you know, all the time now.
And not to make you, we talked about him earlier. You could throw Vince Young into the same category after he left Texas, and he's
Yeah.
openly said that he cared more about making money through his brand and going and doing different things and being in the playbook and working with his team. And it's one of these ones that it's sad, but once your opportunity, which is about a 2 to 3 year window in the NFL to really sort of make it and be that guy, once that passes, I would argue it's impossible to come back. You just, once that opportunity is gone, it's gone in a heartbeat. And the NFL is so quick that if you are not meeting the expectation that they set, you're done.
For
It's
sure.
difficult. But I know we've gotten off on some topics of NIL and coaching hires, which is good. We'll definitely, what you can expect from us in the offseason, you sort of got a preview of it with the Goat Mountain. We're going to go through, try to go through conference by conference and go through the teams. I can't promise you that we're going to talk about Vanderbilt. Why? One, Vanderbilt ain't got no goats. They've got Jay Cutler.
Time out. Jay Cutler.
I know they got Jay Cutler, but outside of that, it's difficult to find guys in there. We're going to do that for college teams. We're going to do that for pro teams. College, which you can expect us to look at, especially once more fidelity comes to the Harbaugh coaching situation, Kirby Smart coaching situation, just sort of how things shake out going into next year. We'll get some more fidelity on that. We'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. But, at the end of the day, it's like a sad time. I told it was funny. My wife was sitting there and she was like, "Oh, there's no football next weekend." I was like, "Oh, there's football. It's the only football I got left. Now it's just the NFL. College is done." So it's crazy as quickly as the season was here, it's now gone. But it's great. We'll get the 12-team playoff next year. Another episode that you're going to hear us do here in a few weeks. I know I teased it for a while. We're going to sit down and talk about that. If the 12-team playoff had happened this year, do we think we get the same results that we got at the end of the season? There's going to be some pretty interesting matchups that would come up and get to play again, which I think would definitely change the outcome of who at least got to play Michigan and who got to play Washington going forward. But we'll talk more about that in a later episode. Do you got anything else that you want to add before we wrap it up?
Man, I'm just sitting there thinking about that already. I put my money on Georgia getting a second chance of redemption. But yeah, man, we'll get into that sometime down the road. But for now, that's all I got.
Sweet. Yeah, and not to beat you to the punch, but I agree with you. I would not want to bet against Georgia after losing an SEC championship. They would be tough. That would be a tough one to kill out of the playoffs.
Just ask Florida State.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, the first thing that came to mind, Florida State. I don't know if you saw it. It's probably one of the meanest things I've read, but it was one of the truest things I read. They had that still shot of Lee Corso standing down there on the sideline, and they were like, "Don't know if that's Lee Corso or the Florida State logo."
Oh gosh.
I love. I'll end it with this. I grew up watching College Game Day, and I loved College Game Day, and I still love College Game Day, and I love the headgear pick. It's something that I do love turning in and watching. The Corso that I grew up watching is not the same Corso that we watch today. Like, it's clear that age has taken its toll. He's not as sharp and quick-witted as he used to be. What I would love to see him do, and it would be passing the torch, which I think for the, when you talk about game day and everything else, I think that Corso, what he wants is more, it's not just about him, it's about continuing the legacy of game day. What I would love to see him do is for his final headgear pick is to slap it on Pat McAfee and say, you start picking the headgears. To pass that tradition along is where I'd love to see it go. Eventually, he's not going to be on the episode anymore of College Game Day. It'll be sad whenever he stops, but I will say it is painful every time he's on. So,
yeah, I agree. And, the fact that this past season somebody got his autograph tattooed on him right there on the spot, just that was the send-off right there. Just tattoo some guy's leg and call it a day. That was a great career. It's been sad to watch. I think I've said it the last 5 years, just the decline that everybody's seeing. But yeah, that tradition, I don't know if McAfee would be able to carry that on. There's a lot of people calling for his head to get off that show, a lot of traditionalists. But I do say for Lee Corso, he's always had great inputs. And what I love most is he's always got that B2 on the lapel. Got to love that for his support of the troops.
I agree with you, not to drag this episode on any longer. I do think Pat McAfee leaves Game Day. I think he's built a big enough brand for himself that he can stand alone and he doesn't need ESPN to be successful. Like, it's always great to have extra money and to do that, but you can tell that right now there is definitely a rift between him and ESPN. And if fans don't like it, he has plenty of fans who do like him. He'll turn into them. And I would not be shocked to see him go. So I think he's been funny, but at the same time, no one wants to sit up there and be criticized all day long, especially if I'm making millions. I'm not going to listen to it. I'll just go do my own thing and continue to find success. But anything else before we wrap up?
No, man, that's it.
Sweet. Well, thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate you guys. Go follow us on TikTok and Instagram, our social media, or our podcast channels. So YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify will always be up. Do thank you guys for tuning in. Time to pull chalks. We'll see you next time.